right. You know what we've got in this game, besides the obvious of a Pac-12 matchup that could determine championship hopes down the line, is a rarity at this early stage in the season where we've got two teams that have a common data point. Of course, Fresno State and USC just played this past weekend. The Trojans with a convincing 45-17 win. The offense churning out yards and points, and really they jumped out ahead and they stayed ahead and were never challenged for the most part second quarter on. Whereas, of course, Oregon State and Fresno State played a heck of a game, fun game, down to the wire. Jonathan Smith going for a fourth down last play of the game gamble where he could have opted for the field goal to send the game into overtime, and Oregon State pulls it off. They score from the 2 and win that game in dramatic fashion. So there is a common opponent element here. Your thoughts about USC's performance against the Bulldogs on Saturday night?
Yeah, so, if you've been following my work at Trojans Wire, folks, watching here on the Voice of College Football, I mean, the score was 45-17, but this was not an easy game. It wasn't. Like, don't let the smooth taste fool you. USC had to convert 3 fourth downs in the first 21 minutes to get touchdowns on its first 3 drives. This was not the easy breezy Stanford start where USC didn't face a third down until a minute before halftime, when essentially, that was just a throwaway possession. All the Trojans needed to do on that possession right before halftime against Stanford was just get a first down to drain the clock, and they did. So essentially, USC didn't face a significant third down at any point against Stanford. But against Fresno State, 3 fourth downs early, faced a few 3rd and 10s, a few 3rd and longs. Caleb Williams was able to complete the passes or at least get an 8-yard, 9-yard gain to set up 4th and short, and then subsequently convert that 4th down. This was not the cakewalk that we saw against Stanford. And if you listen to the Riley Files, our off-season podcast special at Trojans Wire, you know that Iowa State and defensive coordinator John Heacock, they had the secret sauce for containing Lincoln Riley's Oklahoma offenses. And what was that? It was get lots of guys back in coverage, put lots of bodies deep. You're not going to beat us over the top with the deep ball. Caleb Williams, you're going to have to be patient. You're going to have to make the right read. You're going to have to check down. You're going to have to hit Travis Dye on the short flat. And what's another thing that we've said all off season, is that as soon as you get some injuries on the offensive line and you go deeper into the depth chart, that's when the talent drop off and the quality drop off really emerges. So Cortland Ford, he dressed, but he didn't play against Fresno State. So Bobby Haskins was the guy at left tackle. He got hurt twice in this game, a little bit in the second quarter, got hurt again a little bit more severely in the fourth quarter. But when he got hurt in the second quarter and he left and Mason Murphy came in for Bobby Haskins at left tackle, what happened? He got smoked. He got toasted. Fresno State's edge rushers were able to beat him in one-on-one matchups. So Caleb Williams got his first taste of backside pressure, and he didn't respond all that well. I mean, not horribly, like he didn't throw picks, but like he didn't make those check downs. He didn't make those quick adjustments in terms of getting rid of the ball quickly, seeing Travis Dye in the short flat. So he didn't respond to that. And like that's not an indictment of Caleb Williams. It's just first few games were easy, right? And then when something happens to disrupt your flow and your rhythm, okay, it's going to be an adjustment. And so we certainly saw that with Caleb Williams. Point is that as soon as USC gets these injuries on the offensive front, then that's when the architecture can crumble. So Bobby Haskins did come back in the third quarter after his injury in the second quarter, but then he left again in the fourth quarter. So because Cortland Ford dressed for last week, it was at least like a slight chance of a possibility that he might have been pressed into service if absolutely needed, but they didn't need him. I would expect him to play against Oregon State, but he's not going to be 100%, and Bobby Haskins is not going to be 100%, assuming that he plays as well. And so that left tackle position, that is the big raging alarm. It's the siren emoji. That is where USC has to really worry about its larger offensive capacity against Oregon State. And so it sets up so many things in terms of how we break down this game, how we look at it. I mean, I was excited about this game throughout the offseason, as you all know, but now the chess match gets really deep. And what we saw from Lincoln Riley in the second half against Fresno State gives Oregon State more things to study on film, and it really gets into how USC tries to attack Oregon State when the Trojans have the ball. You saw Caleb Williams use the read option, and you saw the threat of Caleb Williams as a runner, pulling the ball away from the running back, using the keeper, usually to the right side. You know, that converted a fourth down. It got some other key plays. And, you know, when Trojan fans, like this is USC, we love student body right, of course, you know, run the ball, ram it down their throat, show them who's boss. Well, that's a piece of it. But having Caleb Williams and the threat of his quarterback keeper, that play will need to be used to set up the power running game, because if everyone's going to crash down on the running back, you need the threat of Caleb Williams taking the ball to the outside to keep defenses honest. And the other thing you're obviously going to need is a screen game. We really haven't seen USC use screen passes a whole lot. And Lincoln Riley has that in his toolbox. I saw it plenty of times at Oklahoma, using wide receiver screens, getting them out in the flat. We could also see Travis Dye used not as much as a rusher in this game against Oregon State, but as a receiver coming out of the backfield. We could also see Travis Dye providing pass protection, blitz pickups, helping with the left tackle if that is needed. You know, if it's clear that Cortland Ford and Bobby Haskins are just not holding up physically, then you might see Travis Dye deployed as someone who chips, someone who helps out with pass protection. But maybe, you know, the threat of Travis Dye blocking is going to set him up as kind of a receiver on like a delay screen, you know, a slow developing play where you try and invite the Oregon State pass rush in, and then you dump a ball to Travis Dye or maybe Austin Jones past the defense. Maybe it's, you know, using the screen from the side where the defense is blitzing or where you're expecting that rush. So that's usually going to be on the left side against the left tackle. So like the contours of this chess match are really getting interesting, because in week 2, USC was just throwing long balls and having success against Stanford. Caleb Williams, Jordan Addison, Mario Williams made it look very, very easy. Then against Fresno State with a more physical front four, you know, which challenged USC's offensive line a lot more than Stanford did. And also with that Iowa State scheme of having everybody back, shutting off the deep ball, forcing Caleb Williams to be patient and work the short passing game. USC then had to go to the read option and use Caleb Williams as a runner. So we really got to see more layers in terms of Lincoln Riley's thought process, how Caleb Williams adjusts when things aren't going smoothly. Lots of layers to unpack, but those are like some of the components in terms of how USC's offense attacks Oregon State's defense. It's going to be interesting to watch.